Chapter 3. If you would pray. In the passages of the Infinite Way, reference is made to walking in the morning and then going all through the day in the constant recognition of the presence of and power of God in every experience. Remember the passage of Scripture, quote, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee," end of quote. Acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he will give thee rest. Quote, "Quietness and confidence shall be my strength," end of quote. Quote again, "I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever," end of quote. Remember the 91st Psalm, the first verse, quote, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High," end of quote. This psalm goes on to relate the terrible things that would not come nigh your dwelling place if your dwelling place was the secret place of the Most High. Here, again, is the same idea, quote, "I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever," end of quote. If you are living in the consciousness of God constantly, you too can say, quote, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters," end of quote. If you are not living in the consciousness of the presence of God, certainly you cannot expect to demonstrate the rest of the 91st Psalm or the 23rd Psalm. There again, the highest concept or idea of prayer is the recognition of God as an omnipresence, omnipotent, the recognition of God as the ever-present, ever-available, the recognition of God as the law, but the light unto our being, but unto no attempt to make to do so. This is the highest concept of prayer, this constant dwelling in the realization of God's presence. No longer need you wander, quote, "What prayer shall I pray today?" end of quote. You have prayed all the prayer that there is when you pray, quote, "I dwell in the house of the Lord now and forever," end of quote. Another verification of this is to be found in the 27th Psalm, quote, "The Lord is my light and salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. For whom shall I be afraid? Though an host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confronted. One thing I have, I desire of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life." There it is again, dwelling, living, moving, and having your being in God's consciousness is prayer. It is the highest form of prayer, because once you come to that constant conscious realization of God, then you come back to your 23rd Psalm and you find you are no longer have to reach out to God to pray to God. You merely say, "Why should I? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down. Of course he maketh me, as I have made God my dwelling place," end of quote. This prayer, this realization of prayer, is the one that meets all of our so-called needs. This is the nature of prayer. that reveals all our ultimate harmony to us. There is no God sitting around waiting for us to pray in any right manner or wrong manner. There is no God going to suddenly give us something He has been withholding from us. The Lord being our shepherd, it is impossible for us to want, and it is impossible for God to uphold our good, our safety, our security, our protection. But there is a price, and it can be found in the teachings of the Masters as well as in the Old Testament. That price is, quote, dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, end of quote. Living in the consciousness of God forever. That is the answer. Another confirmation of this can be found in the 32nd Chronicles. Be strong and courageous. Be not afraid nor dismayed by the king of Assyria, nor for all these multitudes that is with him, for there be more with us than with him. There is no prayer, no reaching out to God, no trying to get God to do something. There is merely a statement. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God, to help us and to fight our battles. Then follows the most wonderful words in all the scripture, quote, and the people rested themselves upon the words of Ezekiel, end quote. They didn't rest themselves upon their arms or ammunition. They rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah. And what were these words? Quote, be not afraid, end of quote. The arm of flesh cannot do a thing to you because we have a God. It is only as we live constantly in this assurance of God's presence that we can say, in the face of any trouble or form of trouble, quote, I will fear no evil, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, because I know thou art with me. What difference does it make what experience I go through if I am sure that God is with me? End of quote. The one thing to be ever on guard against is the suggestion, through fear, that possibly God is not with us. There is a story about a man who was training a small son. He took him outside and placed him on the first step and said, quote, jump into Daddy's arms, end of quote. The boy jumped, and his daddy caught him. Then the father placed the boy on the second step and said, quote, jump to Daddy's arms, end of quote. The boy jumped again, and his daddy caught him. Then the father placed the boy on the third step and said, quote, jump into Daddy's arms, end of quote. The boy jumped, but this time the father let the boy fall. The father explained, quote, you see, boy, never trust anybody, not even your daddy, end of quote. Needless to say, after that, the boy could never feel completely assured of his father's help, nor could he know that his fatherhood really meant. That is what happened to us. Somewhere in our lives, through some experience of our own or others, we have come to the conclusion that we could not depend on our Father. When you get to that third step, there is no use trusting Him because He may not be there. Therefore, it is necessary to go back within the innermost recesses of your own being until you reach that point of conviction that the Father is present, that you do not have to fear the multitudes, that you do not even have to fear while you are in the valley of the shadow of death, that you have no fear of lack and limitation, even in the presence of your enemies. Quote, "Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemy. Yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I cannot be made to fear even then, since," quote, "thou art with me." End of quote. If you would attain the highest concept of prayer, you must stop praying in ordinary sense of the words. Make your prayer a continuous realization of the presence and the power of God in all your ways. 24 hours a day, know that God is guiding and directing your every thought, word, and deed. Live in a constant remembrance of God.